Okay, how's that? Is that better? Was it not clear before? Okay, I'm not going to start from the beginning, but what I will say is, this idea that young people have this route into employment, I think, is becoming increasingly untrue because, or shall I say, it's becoming increasingly true for everybody who's out there. It's going to shape the future world of work for all of us. So let me start with a question. So, who here sees themselves as an entrepreneur? Okay, interesting. I'm sorry. Couldn't you hold down a steady job? Who here believes that they have an entrepreneurial mindset? So, the reason that I ask this is that the nature of work is changing really quickly. The gig economy in the US, depending on which source you go to, says that an absolute minimum of 5% of people in America work in the gig economy, and some estimates have that as high as 38%. And globally, over 1 billion people now work essentially outside of the formal economy or traditional employment relationships. So that means that many people, whether they choose to or not, need to know how to run a business. Perhaps a business of one, yourself. So how I manage my brand, how I manage my income, my risk. And of course, as AI begins to shape the future of work, this is going to become increasingly critical. We're going to need to develop those skills, the resilience, the initiative, the adaptability, the judgment. And perhaps most critically, the ability to act without perfect certainty, because it's no longer optional, it is a core survival skill. So, this is the textbook definition of entrepreneurship, versions of this. I believe it's completely insufficient. It's what people outside entrepreneurship use to describe what we do. It doesn't tell us how we feel from the inside. It doesn't tell us about uncertainty, about fear, about self-belief. Because often it's not a lifestyle choice, but a response to a constraint. And now imagine carrying all of that while growing up in a set of circumstances that are less than ideal. And when we talk about access, we often mean access to a device or to reliable internet or access to mentors and other parts of the entrepreneurial development ecosystem. But I think that there's another kind of access that matters just as much, maybe even more, and that is access to aspiration. Access to the belief that you can act on the world, that you can create something, and that you can have agency in the story. And that, to me, is the far, far deeper challenge. So I'm the chair of Games for Change Africa. Amy is the program director. And my day job is running an impact gaming company called Sea Monster. We're based in Cape Town, South Africa. And we do a lot of work in the entrepreneurial development space using the power of games. And we've been doing so for over 15 years now. One of the big projects we're working on at the moment that I'm super proud of is for the King's Trust out of the UK, where they're teaching young people throughout the world, particularly in Commonwealth countries, about entrepreneurship. But the focus today is on this project, the Alan Gray Entrepreneurship Challenge, AGEC. So Alan Gray is one of the biggest investment companies on the continent, billions of dollars under investment. And their hypothesis is that this entrepreneurial mindset is critical to their business and to their futures. And then they've got a foundation, and that's the people that we contract with. So what is it? It's a free-to-play, browser-based game. It's particularly focused on 14-year-olds, and it runs for several weeks each year across multiple countries. It's got leaderboards for schools, provincial, national levels, and the top performers are competing for real cash prizes and for unit trusts for investment that they get. So the best players will get a pathway into live business pitch competitions and further entrepreneurial support. That means it's a competition and a game. Those are two different things with two different dynamics that we needed to solve for. But it's the context, as we know, that changes everything. So entrepreneurship often gets framed as ambition, innovation. Perhaps you picture Silicon Valley when we hear the word. But in Africa and many parts of the world, most people don't become entrepreneurs because they want to, or they want to be the next Elon Musk. Sorry. I had something stuck in my throat there. But it's simply because they couldn't get a job. That's it. That's the starting point. Entrepreneurship is necessity-driven. It's about economic survival, dignity, contribution, mobility, and creating an option where no other exists. And that framing shaped everything in what we built, the product, the pedagogy, and ultimately the design philosophy. And I hope that we all agree that that's something urgent and important to all of us everywhere for all of the work that we do. And at the heart of it is a very simple belief. You actually can't learn entrepreneurship from a book. So we all know about the experiential learning model from David Kolb and others. So focus on the doing, the reflecting, and then applying. Of course, it's the essence of the flipped classroom that we've been talking about for 20 years. And so the idea is super simple. Instead of learning the theory and then trying to figure out how to apply it, learners engage with the problem, experience it first, and then the conceptual framework follows. And the beautiful thing about this is that the role of the teacher then shifts from being the font of all knowledge to being the guide. And we think that really helps learners make sense of the world. But here's the interesting thing, is that it maps perfectly to the entrepreneurial development mindset. The learner in the game becomes an active agent. They make decisions that have visible outcomes. They try it again, not because they have to, but because they want to. They figure it out how to do things differently. And that feedback loop isn't just good game design. That's actually how entrepreneurship works in practice. So there's quite profound links between game design and figuring out how to run a business. So what did we need to build? So here are the technical requirements. This game is 14 megs big. It runs in a browser on one of those really old Android devices with intermittent connectivity. I'll say that again very slowly. The whole game is 14 megs that runs in a browser with no internet connectivity. Thank you for the applause. Okay, that's a hell of a technical achievement. And those weren't compromises, those were the starting conditions. Because access isn't just the technical problem, it's the human one. So of course we had to design for weak connectivity and shared devices and uneven digital literacy. And of course, you can't just assume that every learner has their own email address. They're probably using a family phone. Maybe on Mondays they're online, on Thursdays they're offline, sometimes at school, sometimes at home. And we need to recognize that they're the same person. Because remember, it's also a competition for real money, and we need to make sure we're giving that to real people who actually produce the real results in the game. That is not in any game design textbook. But it shaped all of our thinking around the product. And those weren't obstacles for the brief. That was the brief. Because we need to go beyond making this feel like it's culturally relevant. We needed to do something where people feel that they belonged in the game that they were playing. So, please pause. I'm running out of hands. So what does the game look like? Learners stepped into the role of a local business. Over repeated cycles, they make real decisions. It's the classic tycoon mechanic. And on the surface, of course, it's a business simulation. But underneath that, it really is a rehearsal space for judgment, a place where they can make decisions, see the consequences, fail, and try again safely. So let me show you what that looks like.
Welcome to this year's high school game. Your goal is to become the ultimate entrepreneur, building the most successful business possible to secure your future and inspire your community. Your day-to-day business is divided into 3 main areas. The first thing you'll need to do in a new game is launch your first product. Each product has a highlighted strength. This informs the business strategy you'll be using, so choose carefully. You can also adjust the product selling price. Just remember that customers are less likely to buy when prices are higher. Tap the Launch Product button to add the product to your stock. After that, you can tap on the product in your shop view whenever you want to change something. Options like restocking or discontinuing will appear in a panel. The second important part of your business is your staff. Hiring more staff helps you serve more customers. Remember, staff are people just like you, so keep them happy. Tap on the staff member in the shop view to keep track of their mood, pay their salary, or invest in their training. Last but not least, customers are key to your business. There are 3 main ways of attracting them. The simplest way is through product demand. Launching a new product will bring in new customers for that product. To attract more customers, you'll need to build your reputation and invest in marketing. Your reputation is affected by almost everything you do in the game. Marketing focuses on buying adverts to attract more customers. In summary, running a basic business means launching products, managing staff, building your reputation, and attracting customers. The rest is up to you to master.
So it tracks profit and loss, as you would expect, but you've seen that it also tracks reputation. In other words, how your employees and customers see the business. So it means that learners are navigating some really tricky decisions, financial and ethical, strategic and human. And these dilemmas are drawn from the real texture of running a small business in sub-Saharan Africa. An old school teacher asks for a donation that you can't afford. Your mother brings her friends, but they expect a discount. One of your employees is late every day because of transport issues. You find some stock that's not quite fresh. Do you sell it anyway? These are real considerations. Let me say one thing that the game is not. It is very clear learning objectives. It absolutely ties into the curriculum in multiple countries, but it sits outside the formal schooling curriculum in most contexts. Supplementary, informal, and entirely voluntary. The real magic actually is below the waterline, because the science of entrepreneurship tells us that success is not about intelligence or access to information, it's around the socio-emotional capability. Because for us, the ultimate goal is, do I actually believe that my decisions matter? And that's what the game aims to nurture. Not just as business literacy, but as entrepreneurial agency. So the game creates safety by design. There's no permanent consequences, mistakes are private, and every session is a fresh attempt. But that also doesn't come just from the game. It also comes from the context in the classroom or the aftercare program where it happens. And of course, teachers are a critical part to this, and there's a whole thing that happens below the waterline to empower the teachers and the caregivers around this. And of course, when they connect the gameplay to the real world, that's when all of the magic really starts to happen. Something else that we did is, you're not playing as a faceless CEO. You are a local business owner with roots, relationships, and responsibility. And that sense of identity is one of the game's strongest features. So let me share some of the results, which you can read for yourself. But the one that always jumps out at me here is that from the first time somebody plays until the last time they play, the business value for them goes up about 450%. Done. We're done. Think about that. That's powerful. Just in terms of that prize money across 4 countries, that competitive layer drives the replayability, but there's real money at stake. And so we're not just designing the learning experience, we're also designing a system that people are actively going to try to test, exploit, and outsmart. But honestly, perhaps that's also part of the learning. But it means that we need to design in fairness, identity, verification, auditability, and so those don't become admin problems, they are really part of the product requirements. But that is very different to the design brief that says make an educational game. So here's what happened in 2025. 26 is still busy running. So the 73% completion rates with 1 hour and 17 minutes of voluntary engagement on average per session. You know, in impact work, we often celebrate reach, but reach without completion is just distribution. It's not transformation. Every year, we add a new storyline, and one of the decisions we made early on is that the narrative evolves year on year. And every year, there's a different entry point. So this year, the players took on the role of an employee from last year who decided to start their own business, only to find that their family expected them to hire all the cousins. Sound familiar? So that scenario is not incidental, because in many African contexts, family is not separate from business. It is woven into it. The expectation is that success is shared, and that a job or a business creates an obligation as well as an opportunity. It is a lived reality for many millions of young people around the world. And by building that tension directly into the game, we're not introducing a complication, we're reflecting a truth. Because when the learner finally says, I see myself in my world, we know that that learning has become personal. Of course, repeated play matters. The strongest performers launched many products, played again. Some of the players played hundreds of times. They built spreadsheets. They used AI models to try and reverse engineer our economy. They shared strategies across schools, across classes. One kid said, do you know what A/B testing is? I'm like, yeah, he was 12. So now, is that cheating or is that entrepreneurial thinking? Because we think the hustle is the point. But you know, there's also some real harsh truths that get revealed here, because many learners are inspired by the want to become an entrepreneur, and they do see themselves wanting to own a business one day. But a lot of them just want to get a job rather than creating a job, and that nuance matters. It takes time to fix the structures, the regulations of what's clearly a globally broken educational system. And the game is hopefully part of growing a movement that will cultivate a new mindset of what this could look like for billions of people. So here's some takeaways. The biggest design decisions that we've learned is that when you make a game for impact, especially in constrained environments, access isn't an appendix to the brief. It is part of the creative thesis. The product is the pedagogy. The constraints shape the design. Access first is not a compromise. This is our philosophy. And we didn't arrive at it because it's elegant or it sounds good. We arrived at it because we had no choice. The environments we work in demand it. And I believe that that's transferable for everybody at this event. Designing for the most difficult constraints produces stronger learning experiences for everyone, not just for the margin. Clear feedback loops, meaningful decisions, safe failure, and a reason to return don't just belong in Africa. They belong to every context where learning has to compete for attention, and that is every context. The game isn't the only intervention. So this is a 10-year program which they've been running, Alan Gray, in the real world. We're in year 3 of a 5-year program. As I mentioned at the start, it's part of a larger pipeline where we're getting to real scale, to identify entrepreneurial talent, to build a pipeline, to get into the pitch clubs, and then get access to the broader ecosystem of support from the company, but also from other partners. And we collect data at every point. AGEC is just the part of the platform that helps to make all of this happen. So, if you want real lasting impact, don't build a moment, build a pathway and build with partners. The partnership between ourselves and our customer is a true collaboration. They understand and bring the deep knowledge. We understand the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we are living of it, but we also understand how to do game design, the mechanics, translate that knowledge, and then deliver that at an industrial scale. And of course, to make sure that this is people-centered throughout, where the teachers and learners shape that feedback through every iteration. This is a solution built through African partnerships, tested in African realities. But what we're built there, I believe, is worth taking seriously everywhere. Because the learners are not the end users of the process, they are the participants in shaping it. So as I wrap up, we talk about games as a tool for learning, and of course they are. But I think they are something much more important. They are giving young people a place to experiment with agency, to make those choices, to recover, to notice patterns, and to imagine themselves differently. The best good learning games are compelling and nourishing experiences in their own right. They're not always easy to build, but it is the only thing worth building. If the future is going to demand more resilience and initiative and creativity and self-authorship, then perhaps the most meaningful thing we can do with games is not simply to teach content, it is to help people rehearse the possible. Thank you. No, people just arrive at our front door and throw money at us. Yeah, no, it's easy. I don't know what's it like here. Yeah, listen, it's a 15-year game that we've been doing this, and it is incredibly hard. You know, there's the games for learning, and I think that model is not clear anywhere in the world. You know, how do you create sustainability? How do you sell into schools? How do you activate with teachers who are incredibly busy? And I know that's true in America as it is everywhere. And until we actually get that flywheel spinning, the funding is always going to be ad hoc and project-based and the same reality. So what is unique here is that they do have this long-term perspective. As I like to say to big financial companies, it says on the door, long-term investments. That's kind of what you're saying. So it's not hard for you to imagine that you should do the same. The other side of it is the marketing side. And what we've been doing is like, build your audience of community. Why is it that you're renting it back from Google and Meta every Monday morning like it's the first day of your life? So we've also using games and pioneering how games can be used in a modern marketing context. But yeah, tricky, absolutely. But we're swimming with the tide. And I don't believe we were 5 years ago. I think 5 years ago, we were all, their eyes would glaze over. Now we are getting people to listen. I hope that's true for you. Good. Thank you.